Hey Darian, let's play a game.
What game?
An association word game.
You mean that I say a word and then you say a word?
Yes, let's see where it takes us. Want to go first?
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Let's see. Word game. Let's say commitment.
Ooh. Excitement.
Let's say fun.
Beach.
Doubt.
Sun.
Exploration.
Navigation.
How about consistency?
Ooh. How was it playing that game?
It felt a little uncomfortable at first, but I trust you.
Yeah, it also helped that it was a game. I have a smile on my face.
Yes, it did, but I know we trust each other, so it made it feel a lot easier.
Thank you for playing with me.
Of course. So, I love the quote by Muhammad Ali. It's not the deer that is crossing the road. Rather, it's the road that is crossing the forest.
This one is good. I love this quote, Darian.
Noah, why do you think some people feel uncomfortable with the idea of trusting the journey or, just trusting the process?
I have to say that I get them. Even when we played the game, right? There was that uncomfortableness. Trust the journey. What do you mean? I can control the outcomes of my life. I just need to start taking actions. So,
Right.
yeah.
Definitely right. So, we learned that we need to do everything in our power to make things happen.
Yes, but for some reason, even though we take all the right actions, there are situations in life that no matter how much we try to force the outcome to be what we want, just doesn't work. And I see that with my clients. We don't see the wanted results. And I learned that when I moved from Israel to the US, I was not willing to change my actions or my mindset. I wanted to control. I wanted to control everything to be my way. I wanted to replicate my life in Israel to be the same in the US. But it just didn't work. And it, by the way, cost me to be stuck for almost 5 years.
That's a while. So,
Yeah.
what can we say to someone who still doesn't like the idea of trusting the journey? Because, let's face it, it's difficult. And as you said, it took you almost, 5 years to get there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It took me 5 years. And that's a good question. And I believe it's that, trusting the journey is about the willingness to let go of control and trusting that you take the right steps to get where you need to go. The problem is that in today's reality, we want things to be fast. It's what we see, right? Everything is kind of like fast pacing. And I call ourselves the Amazon Prime generation. And even
Yeah.
2 days right now is not enough. A friend of mine, I really liked it. We talked yesterday, and he said that in some areas like leadership, like when we start a business or have a business or parenting, it's like nurturing a plant. You need to nurture them. They need to get the right light, the right portion of water, and you can't stop. You have to do it always, right? It's a long length relationship, and when we don't expect the situation, we come with a force. It's like rather than just putting some water, it's a waterfall, or too much light, extreme light, and it's too much, because we think that if we bring that big force of waterfall and light, we'll see results fast, but the plant dies. And then, or we feel disappointed with ourselves, or we just stop, right? Because we didn't succeed. So one thing I see that it's helpful to me and the people I work with is work on the patience muscle. And actually, Darian, I started to grow plants 4 years ago, and I learned a lot from my mistakes and the not knowing what the plant needs. And another way that I find that is very helpful is painting. You need a lot of patience with painting. So those are two ways that we can play with the patience muscle as a start. Do you have other ways that you work on your patience start when you want to do things fast or force things to happen your way, if at all?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think actually what we're doing in the form of a podcast can be a
Mm.
patience play, because doing something well requires long-term patience for that.
Mm-hmm.
I think in many ways we have decided to stop doing the 100-year projects. I think people a long time ago said, "Hey, I'll do this project which will require lots of patience, which will outlive me
Mm.
in starting this." And not saying that you're having to do a 100-year project, but what is your 1-year project? What is your 2-year project? Something you're working on every day. I think building like crafting a miniature
Mm.
house or something like that, where all the details and every day working on growing something grows the patience muscle.
Yeah, so it's kind of like those 30 days or 3 months or something like that on social media, where people put a picture every day or something every day, and you grow it slowly, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's really cool. So the other thing that I learned about trusting the journey is really bringing a new perspective, because if we are in the control perspective, right? So I like to bring the perspective of playfulness. I realized that I want to control what is out of my control, and then I move into the force, and I come from a place of anxiety and micromanaging. And it starts with creating awareness. So for me, I know that I get into the micromanaging. That's when I force, or I get into that everything has to be perfect kind of like mindset. So first we need to have that willingness to be aware and understand where are we overusing control and start forcing things. And then when we understand that and figure out when it shows up, we can bring that perspective, for me, playfulness perspective. And when I look at things from that perspective, everything open up for me, because when you are playful, you are creative and you are resourceful, and there is some spaciousness there. So that's what helps me. Can I put that playful hat and have fun with the journey? What's possible for me there from that perspective? So that's what's helpful for me.
Noah, that was pretty cool. Trusting the process. How did you come up with that? What was the reasoning behind really kicking it off with trusting the process or trusting the journey?
Um, Force, control.
Yeah.
I see it how so many times it just gets in our way when we try to control things. And when you talked about the podcasting, people don't get into doing those projects that they really want because it has to be one way or another. And there's so many limitations that we bring into just creating the opportunities or being in possibilities. So that's where I came from.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think you mentioned in the little skit we were doing type of thing about Amazon Prime generation. That really struck a chord with me. And I saw a stand-up comic, I think his name's Ronnie Chang, and I think it's on Amazon Prime, Amazon actually. And he talks about, how people are so Amazon Prime oriented. We want Prime now, and we want Prime yesterday. Like, what? My package did not come in 2 days, or it took 2 days. I want it now, 1 day, 2 hours. Give it to me now,
Yeah, and it brings so many other areas of the now, right? It's that happy selfie that we see on social media, that everything has to look happy, and I want to be happy now, and I want to have successful now. I just was promoted yesterday, and I have to be the perfect manager today, and I have a baby, and I have to be the perfect mother yesterday. So there are all these places where we put so much stress on ourselves, and we don't give ourselves the space to grow and see the results we want, and see how creative and resourceful we are, and how awesome we can be when there is that spaciousness and not everything has to be right now, right this moment. So I wanted to bring that, to remind that.
You definitely brought it. And trusting the journey is really important. That was awesome. Thank you, Noah.
Thank you. Oh, I'm so frustrated, Darian.
What happened?
I'm sitting in front of my computer and nothing, Darian. It's like nothing. I'm telling you, I'm really trying hard to create work, but my entity is resisting the doing. I'm so frustrated.
Right. It's okay.
No, it's not okay. I need to do the work. I have so much to do. I need to create. I need to write. I need to show results.
It's okay. Just stop.
Hold on. Are you that little annoying voice from the cartoon channel that is sitting on my shoulder and telling me, stop, it's okay, why bother? Seriously, Darian, don't you get that I need to show results?
Here are my 4 letters for you to stop. Stop. Stop pretending. Close the computer. Go do something else. I mean, how long were you sitting there anyway?
Half a day. Can you get it? Half a day with no results.
So let me get this straight. You were sitting there half a day with no results?
Well, if you talk, like I did some post on LinkedIn, does that count?
I mean, come on. Noah, you know the answer better than me. Sitting in front of the computer and doing nothing is making you miserable. When you're miserable, you're not resourceful. You're not creative. Actually, here's what I believe. I believe that we can't be in creation all the time. We have cycles, like the seasons. There are moments we create and moments of winter when we hibernate till the ground is ready for the seeds of ideas to blossom again. You see what I mean? And nothing, something will show up. Always does.
In the nothing, something will show up. I never thought about it this way.
Yeah, it's cool. For now, just move away from your desk. Go for a walk in nature. Meet with a friend. Listen to a podcast. Read a book. You'll be inspired and come back to do the work without the need to find something. Something always shows up in the nothing if we let it happen. was also fun. And something showing up in the nothing.
In the
That really,
nothing,
in the nothing.
something.
That's a
I
real issue, I think, today. We don't spend a lot of time doing nothing.
Yeah, last week I talked with a client and I said, "Just do you have time next week?" She's an executive, she works back to back. She's like, "I'm tired," right? And I say, "Look at your calendar. What's going on next week?" And she's checking it. She said, "Well, I can probably get 2 hours next week in the morning to close." And I say, "Okay, so just close them now." And she looks at me and she says, "That freaking me out. You just mean that 2 hours to do nothing, not to work from 8 to 10 a.m. in the morning?" And I say, "Yes. You work every day until 10 p.m. Just take 2 hours in the morning." But what am I going to do? I'm freaking
Yeah.
out about it. We are so afraid from the not doing in so many different aspects when we're business owners, when we even parents, when we see our kids not doing
Yeah.
right. I stopped, by the way. Yeah, I tell them, go to your room, look at the ceiling, have fun.
Very nice. My wife does that all the time. She tells my daughter, like, just go do nothing. Like, just sit and look at
Yeah.
the sky outside. Don't worry about stuff. And she always is very creative. Actually, right now she's doing a crafting project,
Mm.
and it's very meditative for her. But when she's not doing that, it's just like, hey, it's okay to do nothing, just to kind of just exist.
Yeah, and I do see that muscle with my kids because they will go, and when they don't, now we're in the Corona space, and they do remote school in our area. So my daughter will go to play the piano, my son will go to play on different instruments. He's very musical. They will take canvas and paint. And it's not, with coming and asking me, "Mom, what should I do? I'm bored." They just like have that resourcefulness to figure out for their own what they want. And I remember moving from corporate to having my own business and not seeing results. I was freaking out. Like, how can it be that I'm sitting there and doing nothing? And it took me a while to realize that actually, when I'm leaving the work and I'm going for a walk, or I'm listening to a podcast, or I'm meeting with someone, it's part of the work. It's inspire me. And actually, it's kind of like the seasons that you mentioned, that it's a need for me to take the break so I can come up with a really cool idea. And so I learned to, we talked about trusting the journey, that there is always something cool that will show up from the nothing.
Most definitely. And I think that's often why, like, let's say when people travel on planes, now there's Wi-Fi and things on planes now. But if you
Hmm.
remember before that, you really couldn't scroll or do anything or check things. You just kind of sat in the seat. And I used to always, and I do this still, I bring a notebook with me when I'm on a plane. And I get tons of ideas because I'm not distracted. I'm hearing the hum of the plane, I'm
Mm.
looking at the paper, and it's just kind of like all the things start flooding as because
Huh.
I'm really not doing anything at that point.
Yeah. I have to say that I think our generation, right, when we needed to go to a doctor appointment, or I don't know, go with our parents to friends or family. There was nothing else to do. So we would just
Yeah.
sit. And I have that mode when I go on flights, when I get into the airport, right away I get into that mode. It's
Yeah.
like I am in that waiting phase. So I don't need to do anything really. I there is no must reading a book or working. I'm okay with the not doing. And I think it was a muscle or a skill that we learned in an
Yeah.
early age. So sometimes I show my kids, I say, "You see, in France, they don't have iPhone." Joey doesn't
Exactly.
have iPhone. They play.
They just play, they chat with each other, or, just kind of sit around. Well, it's a
Yeah.
great lesson. I think there's
Hmm.
always something in nothing. Thanks, Noah.
Thank you. Hey, Darian, where are you going?
I need to take off. I'm heading to Israel. You made me
Israel.
very curious about this country, you know.
Israel, awesome. Have fun. Oh, the food there is really yummy. So if you can bring back some
Mm.
pitas and hummus and falafel, that would be awesome. Can you do that?
Oh, dang it. I'm in Tel Aviv, but it's such a big city, and I'm really lost. And I am so hungry. Ugh, I can't believe my battery died. Maybe I should ask that lady for a place to eat, maybe a coffee shop. Excuse me. How do I get to the food market?
סליחה, אני לא מדברת אנגלית.
Food? You know, food.
Oh, you mean אני מצטערת, אבל אני ממש לא מבינה, אני לא מדברת אנגלית. אתה מחפש משהו לאכול או קפה?
Oh, cafe. You mean coffee? That can actually work. I can probably change my battery in a coffee shop.
בטריה. קפה? בטריה? קפה?
Yeah, battery, coffee. Where?
אוי, איזה בחור מסכן. טוב, הוא משתמש בידיים, זה עוזר לי להבין, אולי יש לו מפה?
Map, yes. Luckily I have a map.
מפה, יופי. הנה, יש לך פה, אתה רואה, יש לך פה את קפה ארומה, קפה ארומה.
Aroma? You mean the coffee has a good aroma?
ארומה, כן, כן, קפה ארומה. אתה רואה אותו שם?
Oh. It is good that Israeli people talk with their hands. She shows me the sign. Now I can see Cafe Aroma is a coffee shop. And it's at the end of the street. At last, I can figure out the next steps from there. Food in my stomach will make a big difference. Thank you, lady. Thank you so much.
בשמחה.
That was very interesting. By the way, I'm like listening to you and I'm like, wow, this is incredible. I love hearing people speak other languages.
You don't know what I said, right?
No, I mean, some of it I could make out a little bit, like just
Yeah.
you would say, but it was like, it's so easy. You just flowed right into it. Amazing.
Yeah, and really the idea of this what we did is to show people that many times when we are lost, actually we can figure out the situation, right? You spoke English and I spoke Hebrew. I really spoke Hebrew, the language that people speak in Israel, and we were able to capture some of the words, right? You were saying coffee and I got that it's cafe, and you were saying battery and I
Right.
got that it's battery. I said bateria in Hebrew. So we were able to be resourceful and use our hands and whatever to show each other the way that you will not feel lost anymore. And that's why I believe that there is a beauty in being lost that we miss sometimes.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I think about again time before all of the electronics we have, because when you used to have a map,
Mm-hmm.
and we mentioned a map, and like reading a map was crazy for me because I was like, I don't understand this. How do I? I don't want to know where to go. But I remember getting lost so many times in my 20s, like traveling to different places and having to stop at a place and asking somebody, where is this town, or where do I take this left or this right? And now we don't have that because we have GPS basically in our hands and it just tells
Right.
us where to go. We never get lost.
Yeah, and I think that what's cool about the beauty, when people come to me and say, "No, I'm lost," that's when I get excited because I believe that in that moment we really tap into creativity or finding solution, figure it out. Because when we are not there, we are more in procrastination or perfection. It's like I need to make it better. I just need to work on it more, or I'm not sure I'm ready yet. So there is that procrastination perfection space, and we don't get into changing what's need to be shift, that we don't feel where what kind of like get of the situation that we're stuck with. And when we are getting lost, there are two main things that happen. First, as we kind of like took in this experience and what you shared about the map, when before the GPS, but still, we were in situations where you're in a place where the GPS is not working, and the right, you don't get the reception, and that's where it kind of like gets scary in a way, right? And you move into that survival mode, and then you ask yourself, so what are my options? One option is that I'm going to figure it out, and the other option is that I'm going to die, or I'm not going to survive the situation. And it happens in real life, right? Situations of, closing a business, stopping a relationship, or other situations, real death. But most of us don't want to go there. So we choose, we're always at the choice. So we choose to figure it out. And then it's when we are willing to do everything. That's why I love the being lost part, because that's when people come to me, I know that they will commit to everything. And the other part is exactly what you're talking about, that we're willing to take ourselves out of that being alone, and we start reaching out to others and create connection. And we see that right now a lot with different movements that show up. It's like there is my challenge, and I'm getting out because I'm feeling lost, and I'm asking for support and for guidance. And that's how people get out of the situation. So there are two things I love about that. First is that creativity and even innovation that shows up in those moments. And the other is the connection with other people.
Most definitely. Maybe we should all get lost a little more often.
Yeah. We can
Thanks,
open a
Noah.
company. Come get lost with us.
Get lost with us.
Dear Noah,
Awesome.
I need to work on my project.
Dear Darian, I should be more patient in meetings.
Dear Noah, I will try to do what we discussed.
Dear Darian, it will be a hard conversation.
It is going to be a challenging meeting.
Going to school is freaking me out.
Words, words, words.
They create our world.
It can be a should, or it can be a want.
It can be I try, or it can be I choose.
It can be I hope, or it can be I will.
It can be I deserve, or it can be I own it.
It can be a challenge, or it can be an opportunity.
What world are you choosing to create with your words? Well, What word what words are we using to create our world? I think that's a very important conversation, how we wield words to each other.
It's in so many different, it shows up in so many different ways, Darian. It's, there are words that make us small. It's
Yeah.
by the way a female conversation many times that I hear when I network with women, and there is actually tension, between us being us women, and bring that femininity into, and then the conversation about you need to be stronger, and right. But there is that conversation about words that make us small, like just and I guess. um, Sometimes I see, that we're struggling and we want to commit, but we are lacking the commitment. And that's where we use words like, I will try.
Mm.
And that's what Yoda said, do or not do, no
Or do
try.
not. There is no try.
Thank you. Thank you. And words that take away from our control. I should, I need, I have to. So those kind of like we give our power away. And I see a lot, with managers that they don't know how to ask. So they confuse people and other people that, that we want to ask something, but we don't know how. So we confuse the other person and we say things like, I think we should, or I suppose. But what they really mean is that they want the other person to do something. Um, and what we see is that then the words create the world, because if I believe that when I start working with the new team, it's going to be challenging, that's the mindset I bring, right?
Yeah, most definitely. Words do create the world. I mean, as much as we'd like to think that words don't create actions and how people feel about things and how they have motion in their life, it does. So, what comes out of your mouth is really critical, I think, on a daily basis, but we don't often think about it that way.
Yeah, yeah. Especially, when I hear a client says, it was actually really funny, a client said, well, I have no choice. And I said, you always had a choice.
Always.
And we kept the conversation, and she said the other person is not doing, and I said not doing is also a choice. And then my client said, it's right, they're choosing not to
Yep.
do because that's the way to control the situation. So, and then they kept going and said again, well, I don't have a choice. And I said, you do have a choice, you always had a choice. And then the client said, well, I chose my words poorly. And that was,
Yeah.
and I am at the choice. So we don't pay attention to what we bring in so many, especially in relationships with other people. This conversation is going to be hard. Saying that will be challenging. The meeting will be this way or the other way. And we bring that burden into the experience before it even happened.
We bring the burden into our experience before it even happens.
That was
So true.
poetic.
Wow. That is a line to remember, everyone.
Tweetable moment, unexpectedly.
Yeah, I that really hit me. It's true. It's kind of like we get anxious before knowing if there's really a reason to be anxious at all for something. It's
Hmm.
and often, I always heard this, things are often more worse in your mind than they actually are when you sit down and talk with somebody. Some things can be bad, but if you're creating that burden ahead of time, you're creating this extra layer
Hmm.
of anxiety or of pressure that actually may not even exist. No.
And you don't even think about the situation differently because you're stuck on that perspective. You can come differently. You can decide that you come to a conversation rather to a conflict, rather, right?
Yeah.
So if I come to a conversation and not to a conflict, I look at it differently, because if I come, there was a client that used the word, I'm going to a war. I need to bring my all my defense when I go into
Hmm.
that room. And we left the conversation with, there is no war in that room. There is just a conversation, and she brings curiosity.
Mm.
So when we come from a place of I'm going to a war, of course I'm going to prepare for a war. But if I'm going to a conversation that comes from curiosity, I bring different energy.
Most definitely. So the thing to
So
remember is words create your world. What world do you want to live in?
yeah, what world do you want to live in? So Darian, you probably know Sheryl Sandberg and her famous Lean In. So actually, in the last year, I invite everyone to take a few moments and lean back. So today, I want to invite you to take a few moments with us and lean back.
Yeah. No matter if you stand, sit, or lean back.
Leaning back is about slowing down your actions and taking a moment to reflect, to check yourself before you act.
Leaning back is also your ability to create space between you and others, creating a space to listen and a space to solve problems or plan.
I believe that lean back and pay attention are going really well together. Are you the one who is talking most of the time in the meeting?
Lean back and ask yourself, what is your energy level? Are you on a momentum or do you need time to recharge?
When was the last time you took a moment to rethink if what you are going to send is necessary and or kind?
And when was the last time you or your team have accomplished something and you took a moment to recognize and celebrate them or you?
So lean back, my friends. Take a moment to feel the back of the seat, creating some space between you and yourself.
And lean back so you can create a space between you and others and hear what others feel, think, and dream. Leaning back, you say.
Yeah, can you hear me well? I'm leaning back.
You're leaning back. You're feeling the back of the seat.
I do. I do.
So, what was you talked about Sheryl Sandberg and the leaning in,
Hmm.
the leaning back part. Was that a natural manifestation of hearing the leaning in part?
Um, yeah, there is something in me that likes to push back a bit on some things that people say, and the leaning in comes from kind of like supporting each other. But sometimes I feel that people lean in too much. They are overusing the lean in, and then they lose perspective, and there is no spaciousness. There is no space. They're very tactical. They are very reactive, um, and don't take a moment to step back because, again, it's wasting time. That's what comes kind of like into mind. But when you lean back, you can see things differently. I
Yeah,
don't know. Yeah.
yeah, it's a different way of looking at it for sure.
I don't know what you feel, but sometimes there are people that come too close, kind of like cross my personal right. I don't.
Yeah,
I feel very uncomfortable even right now you can't see me, but I'm kind of like my body gets that posture that it's too close, and we do that in different ways, not because we're bad people, but it could be that we just don't lean back and then we talk too much, right?
right.
Or we just tell everyone what to do. uh,
Yeah.
So, or we just don't reflect. We don't take time to reflect and
Yeah,
create a
we're running the
space.
race. We're just running the race all the time. We don't
Yes.
sit back and go, hey, how was that race? How am I feeling? How about I lean back instead of leaning in all the time?
Yeah. And I'm going to say something. Sometimes it's very hard to lean back when you are in a survival mode. Okay.
Yeah.
But what I see, some clients will come and they will say, I don't know where to start. I'm overwhelmed. There is so much to do. I know, they are in that reactive mode, and we create that spaciousness that they will have the space to think, to reflect. And then suddenly they fall in love with the leaning back, because they move from that reactive, tactical space to a proactive, strategic space.
Makes a lot of sense. I've heard so much about leaning in and and really moving that direction. But there's always two directions or multiple directions to a lot of things. So I think we'd all do good to slow down sometimes and just lean back.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Dr. D's Social Network. Make sure you listen to future episodes. Also, please make sure to rate and review My Dad's Show on Apple Podcasts in the rate and review section. Thanks, everyone.
Experiment. We're going to ask you to be with the quiet in the next few seconds and just notice what's going on internally.
Ready, set, quiet. Okay. How long do you think the pause was? The pause was for about 20 and a bit seconds. That's it.
We say that our world is too loud, but could it be that quiet is loud?
Quiet can be loud internally. That's what I believe. So many thoughts, so many things we need to do, so many emotions, so many concerns.
So we quiet down the loud by doing.
Yes, or by talking. If I'm quiet or they are quiet, it's too loud inside. So I talk. This way, I can control the uncomfortable voice within.
So, what can we learn from being quiet while feeling loud internally?
And what can we learn when others are loud externally?
So I remember a little bit talking about this whole when we were coming up with the idea of like being quiet and
Hmm.
something like that. And I thought that was really cool. And so I love how it played out.
Tell me more.
I think that we're just not quiet enough. We spend so much time being loud or and loud doesn't mean projection of the voice of anything. Maybe it's just our life is loud. Our commitments can be loud. Our constant moving from one thing to the next thing can be loud. Our internal dialogue about ourselves can be loud. Many things are keeping us in this constant state of noise and distraction, both internally and externally.
Yeah, you talk, and I think about the social media and technology. I just got the Fitbit, and yesterday I was facilitating a group coaching, and suddenly the buzz on my watch started. While I was being quiet with the group, there was that buzz on my watch. It was like, can I just get a quiet for one moment with all the technology? Right? It's when people work in companies, the Slack and the inbox and the iPhone and all those different things that just jump on us from so many different places that then when we want to be quiet, we don't even know how to do that. It feels weird.
It does. I sense that a lot of people in this time they struggle with being quiet. And maybe it makes me think of also like when I was growing up, sometimes we'd drive in a car and all of us in our family would just be quiet in the car and just
Mm.
hear the sound of the road. And maybe there was a low hum of some music, but it was very odd, not very audible. And now I think we try not to have silence when we're with other people, kind of the nervous chatter regularly. And sometimes it's just fine to not say anything.
Yeah, you made me think about my daughter and I. We used to live in New York. Now I live in North Carolina. And I took her back to New York City. She really missed the city. And my daughter is more of the introverted persona. And she really tried to be that skippy, extroverted persona. And I could see how her energy is like slowing down and slowing down. And then she looked at me and she said, Mom, would that be okay if we walk and we're not going to talk? And I said, of course. Yeah, I told her, Daddy and I can be together for hours and not talk. That's fine. But
Yeah.
we feel so uncomfortable. And I think it's also cultural. If some people read the book Quiet about introversion, this culture, the American culture, pushing to be in that extroversion in the showing up. You get your grades for showing up in class. You're being promoted the more you speak in meetings. I see that a lot. And there are other cultures that you don't need to show up all the time. You are not being graded on talking. Being quiet or processing quietly is actually appreciated. So that's one side. And the other side is sometimes that it's really hard to be with the emotions that we don't want to feel and the
Mm,
thoughts that
yeah.
we don't want to think about. And that can be that loudness from the inside.
Most definitely. Yeah, I think I like the cultural comparison. And sometimes we don't think outside of our own, let's say country and the
Mm.
cultures related to different countries and how often that's why I love visiting other countries because you can immerse yourself in the different customs and ways of living. And it's good to understand that your way is not the only way. And being loud all the time, whether it's internally or externally, is not always a positive thing. It's good to be quiet. And sometimes we just need quiet.
Yeah, and I will just add one more thing, and then I will be quiet. Is is that moment when people say, "I don't know." You ask them a question, and their answer is, "I don't know." Please be quiet after you ask this question. Count to 5 and keep being quiet, and count till 10, and they will know. They always know. So, whenever you hear a person saying, I don't know, I urge you to be quiet. Shh, baby girl, please don't cry. I love you so much. I never want to see you in pain. Shh. Please don't cry, my love. Shh.
Shh.
Whose pain am I trying to shush? The pain of the baby or my pain? If those are her emotions and her pain, what makes me so uncomfortable with her needs to express them? Shh. Please don't cry.
Wash your face.
Stop it right away.
I am done with your drama.
Don't try to play games with me.
I am so sorry. I didn't mean to cry.
I'm so sorry. I really didn't mean to cry. Please excuse me.
Crying is being human. By the way, I really liked that one. There was something so simple and so powerful about what we just did.
Oh my gosh, you have no clue how many thoughts showed up in my mind when I did that one.
Really?
Resonated so much. Yeah.
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 Wow. Incredible. It was a combination of the silence, of the mood change, and all these
Mhm.
different. It was magical.
When I went to coaching school and they talked about us doing that shh, don't cry to our babies, it hit me that we quiet people's emotions from the moment they are born. We don't do that because we are trying to close them up, right? We
Right.
just want to protect them. And the reason we say that shh, don't cry is not because we don't want them to express their emotions, but because it's painful for us to see them crying, right?
Yeah.
And I came back home, and that's why I call my youngest, is now 12, but it was almost 10 years ago or something like that when I went to that school. He was a year and a half, something like that. And he had this big cry. And before I would just say, please don't cry. Let's see, kind of like trying to figure out why he's crying and help him go through that.
Yeah.
And I did something different. And I said to him, do you need to cry? And he said, yes. And I said, go for it.
Mm.
And that's why I call my little one my coaching child. I can see his emotion. And by the way, I'm not sure it's because the way I'm parenting him, but his emotional intelligence is so high. His ability to understand emotions of others and also do the processing around them is amazing. But it was, when a client or a person I talk with apologizes for crying, I always tell them, you're human. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Crying is human, as we ended it off with. And we often are trying to get people not to cry, to shut down a part of their emotional spectrum. And it's totally fine. I blabber up all the time, man. I'm telling you, you get me in a movie or any situation, I get all worked up and the tears start flowing. I talk to somebody I love and I care about, and we start talking about each other, and I get very emotional, and it's totally beautiful, I think.
Mm-hmm. It is beautiful. And there is that tension between expressing the emotions, but how we are with the emotions of others, right? If I see you now crying, how can I be next to you and not want to make you stop crying? Because it's uncomfortable to me. It's not about you anymore. And the reason I say that it brought so many thoughts is that my daughter, who is 16, was diagnosed with Crohn's a few years ago. And that's not a fun space to be with your child when you don't know what they have, or at the beginning when you're being, the child or anyone is being diagnosed with some health issues. And my husband and I would come to her all the time and ask, how are you doing? How do you feel? How do you feel? How do you feel? And one day she was, I think, like 13 and a bit. And she looked me, she has these big blue eyes, and she looked at me and she said, Mom, you have to stop asking me, how do you feel? Every time you ask that because you try to figure out something with yourself, you make me feel more and more not healthy and not being sick, feeling sick. So by asking me all the time how you feel, you're not helping me. You're actually getting in my way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for sure. I don't know, this one particularly was very impactful. I mean, all the ones we've done so far have been fun and interesting, but there was something to the emotional compass of this one, about the baby and not crying, but crying is human.
It is.
Hey, Red Riding Hood, how are you?
I'm okay, although I do have a little problem.
What's going on?
Well, you see, I have a problem and I'm not sure what is the right path for me.
Interesting. Tell me more.
You see, if I choose this path to walk on, my mom will be upset that I didn't listen to her and walked where she told me very clearly not to go. Now, no offense to you, I know you are a good guy, but there are some bad wolves out there.
I hear you.
Now, on the other hand, if I choose the other path to walk there, it's just, boring, lame. You know me, it's not cool. You get the vibe. You see, one path I'm good and lame, and if I choose the other one, I'm bad girl. Just like you.
I see, but I disagree.
What?
I am sorry, Little Red Riding Hood. I disagree. Choosing between the two paths is not your problem. You are not stuck with the problem of where to go. Your problem is that you are stuck with two solutions that limit your way of thinking.
Huh?
Yeah, your problem is not the problem. Your problem is that you are stuck between two and only two solutions. Who will you be? A bad girl or a lame girl? When you look at the world believing these are your only two options, you are limited. Are these the only options of who you can be? Any chance for other optional solutions?
Actually, when you put it this way, I think I was stuck with two solutions. I don't want to be a bad girl, nor a lame girl. I want to be a rebel who makes her own choices. So listen, Wolfie, what I'm thinking.
I'm listening.
Will you marry me?
Oh, wow. I didn't expect that. Well, the end of that was definitely out of left field. I like the Wolfie part too. That was fun.
Yeah. So the problem is not the problem. The problem is in the solution. I see that a lot. What do you think about that before I share my thoughts?
Yeah, I think we often give ourselves just a couple of options, or we see the options that are presented to us. We think that's our mindset, one or the other. But
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like when you think about a path in the forest, and there's two paths. One goes to the right, one goes to the left, and the whole thing of like, well, you just create your own path. You can go in the middle if you want, just
Mm-hmm.
because it's not paved or it's not been put together where it's an actual path doesn't mean you can't go there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And it's amazing to see how we limit ourselves because we just look at the situation, the problem, addressing only those two solutions or even just one. And not inviting ourselves to see that there are so many other possibilities, so many other solutions that can actually break us free rather than feeling stuck. So, for very simple example, one of my clients, she didn't like her work, which was in finance,
Mm-hmm.
but she needed to work to bring money. What she really wanted to do was to volunteer. So it was, how can I choose doing something that I don't like and letting go of something that I really want to do, which is volunteering and doing something that I enjoy when I volunteer. And I had to ask kind of like a question in the middle and say, do you need to work a full time job? And she said, no, actually not. My situation is that I don't need to work a full time job. So I said, okay, so if you would create your best week to look like, what would it look like? And she said, I would work part time and I would volunteer 2 days a week. And I said, cool. So go find that work. And she did a week after. A week after she found a part time job and she started volunteering with what she wanted. And she was so happy. We make ourselves so many times miserable because we are not looking beyond those solutions.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. There's always other options or choices, but how well do we allow ourselves or give ourselves permission to explore other options or choices in life? It's not just what we think is just there for us. There are other options, but we limit ourselves a lot too, with that. So,
Yeah. And part of the way is that we compare ourselves to how other people do things. We see their
yeah.
solutions and then we believe that this is the only solution, right? after
Yes.
after high school I must go to college, right? That's the only way to do things, and that's limit on how we look at things. There are many other people that did it in a different way and had beautiful life and successful life. But and our brain does that. We are wired this way to compare for survival and all those other things. But then my invitation is, look beyond. Is there a different option? Is there a different possibility?
Yeah. look beyond. And I think, kind of wrapping it up a little bit, it really made me think, and I've really worked on this a long time. And maybe this sounds controversial, but throughout the years in our digital age, as more and more social media has become available, I think sometimes there's this idea that we are given these options. In order to be successful in business, you have to have every social media available to you. You must post this amount of times and do that. And I've always thought in my mind, why? Why do I have to do this? Why do I have to commit to this? There's some of these things I don't want, maybe all of them I don't want. Why do I have
Mm-hmm.
to do this? Because that's what successful people do. What does
Mm-hmm.
that mean? What does that mean? That your success is not defined as my success for that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just one example, but there are a multitude of examples like that where someone says, well, this is how this person became successful. But okay, what does success mean? And two, it doesn't always have to be the same pathway for a version of success.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying, because I see so many people struggle, because it's like, just for the example of the four social medias, right, of whatever it is right now, I can't follow anymore, but I need to be on Instagram, and I need to be on Facebook, and I need to be here, and I need to be there, and I need, and they don't do anything, because exactly what you're saying, there is that very little voice that telling them, who said that this is the solution.
Yeah.
They focus, their focus is on, I need to do it, but that inner voice knows better, and it makes them procrastinate, and they're frustrated with themselves. And then when you need to do that work with yourself or with another person that helps you, suddenly you realize that you resent that idea,
Yeah.
and you don't see the purpose behind that. And then you start creating from freedom, like you do, and you say, okay, I'm just
Mm-hmm.
focusing on one thing that makes sense to me, that's where I want to be, and that's what will bring what I believe the success I want. And define for yourself those things, because when there is no purpose behind that, that's when procrastination shows up.
Most definitely. So think to yourself, if you've been given just a few options, you probably have a lot more.
Many more.